Hey guys, Zomfox here, and today we're going to be looking at the top 5 highest selling Pokemon cards from this past weekend's Heritage Signature Pokemon Auction. Yes, we had an actual Pokemon Signature Auction this past weekend. This wasn't like the first Heritage Auction recap I did where it was a TCG one. This was just Pokemon. And it wasn't just cards, it was cards, games, and art. It was a really cool auction, really fun one that almost anyone could participate in. As usually with Signature Auctions, pretty much expecting everything to be like a four-figure plus. This one, there were items that sold for as low as like $100 in it, meaning that anyone could have bid on it. There were a couple things that I kind of regret not going after. There was like a copy of Japanese Stadium 2 and Pokemon White that sold like under $300, sealed, high grades, but still recovering from the last Heritage Auction that Fox purchase. But let's get on to this by looking at 5 honorable mentions, starting off with the Pikachu Celebrations UPC Metal Gold PSA 10 that sold for $2,700.50. Now, because you don't remember, Celebrations had a UPC that still one of the best UPCs they ever put out. You got a ton of Celebrations packs, ton of Sword Shield packs. You also got a bunch of promos. Two of the main ones, though, were the Charizard and Pikachu base set reprints, which were done in this gold medal form, right? We've seen this similar with like the gold Mew from 151. These cards are really hard to grade. They were almost always damaged in the box. They were metal cards. They had a lot of print defects. They still had other issues. So getting these in PS10 condition is really hard. There's about 8,700 of these graded, and only 331 of them are PSA 10s. Is a gem rate of about 4%, which is insanely low. Now, in terms of how this fares with recent sales, the recent sales with all of these being within the past 4 months were 3,300, 2,800, 25, 25, and 2,000 within the last 4 months. So this is a card that it's selling $2,750 isn't super shocking, but it is higher than what it used to be. This is one of those cards that has been going up in value. I mean, we're talking about the most recent sales being the 33 and 2,800. We talked about it in the last Heritage video. A lot of these cards that are basically like anything from like the middle part of the Sword and Shield era to vintage have all been kind of rising compared to Scarlet and Violet cards. So seeing this rise to this point isn't super shocking. And the fact is, this is still a really, really cool card. Charizard still sells for a decent amount more than this one, which makes a lot of sense. But this is a card that I do think that this is a okay buy. Not an overpay, again, especially considering the last sale was $3,300. And the fact that this is a very tough card to find in high grade. This isn't one of those where you're just going to magically see this pop hit 400 within the next month, right? This is a card that is very hard to get in that high grade condition. So owning this to PSA 10, less than a pop 400, that's an actually rare card in grade. So I think this was a solid buy. I think this is a really cool card. This is a card that definitely has a good future. It's a very iconic card from the Sword and Shield era. This and the Charizard, two of the most iconic cards from the Sword and Shield era, despite not being pack-pulled cards, just because Celebrations was such a big deal when it came out. These being in the UPC, I mean, hell, this is where a lot of the value in the UPC comes from. It's because of the fact you get two promos that are very desirable. So that's the number 5 honorable mention. Now, the number 4 honorable mention is going to be the Dark Charizard First Edition 2000 Rocket in a PSA 10. Now, by the way, these honorable mentions, just like last time, are just 5 honorable mentions that I picked out to talk about. These are not, the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th highest selling cards. This is one I wanted to pick because of the fact this was a massive overpay. Look, this card in PS10 condition is not really that rare compared to one we just talked about, right? The one we just talked about, the Metal Pikachu, is a gem rate of about 4%. This is a gem rate of a little under 10%. It's about 700 of the 7,200 graded are PSA 10s. In fact, the unlimited version is actually a significantly rarer card in PS10 condition, as that one has like 150 more copies graded, but only 240 of them are PSA 10s. Now, the last few first edition cards of Dark Charizard have sold for under $2,000, and the Unlimited has sold for under $1,000, usually about 900. Unlimited honestly is a bit undervalued. It's not like Neo Genesis. We talked about that in the last one, right? Neo Genesis first edition versus Unlimited. The Unlimited stuff is insanely tough to get in high grade. There's another one of those instances where the Dark Charizard Unlimited is just so hard to get in high grade. This is one of those where it's just a straight overpay. Even if you were to not count how much those other ones are selling for, this card being like a near $4,000 card just doesn't make a ton of sense. This is not the holographic version. There is a holographic version in this same set. So this is not like the best Dark Charizard you can get in this set. So already kind of takes a hit there. The fact that the unlimited version is so hard to get graded in a PSA 10 versus this one. I mean, you're talking about a 10% gem rate for a true vintage card. Like, come on, we're not talking about something that's insanely rare. Again, I know this is one that's going to cause some stir. Is this, people trying to manipulate it? Is this something that's going to get paid? Heritage just has a thing where this happens every once in a while, where you will have certain items just go for more than they should. I mean, I've seen it a lot, especially with comics, where you'll just see a comic book show up, you know what it should sell for, it ends up selling for some insane amount. I mean, with Heritage, you just got people who just, bid like this, because of course it's, you keep bidding until somebody doesn't bid for I think it's 20-ish seconds. So it's not super shocking to see stuff like this happen, but this was a gross overpay for sure. So not a good buy, especially because the card itself, it's just, if this was the unlimited version, it would make more sense because that's just a card that's going to show up less. But even that one is still worth less than the first edition because it's unlimited, despite the fact that it's rare and grade. And this isn't even one that I think could be really transitioned to BGS, because especially with PSA 10s like this, it is important to note that one play is to get it cracked and reslabbed with Beckett, because if you get a Beckett 10, or imagine getting a Black Label, you're talking about some serious money. This is a card that is not going to get a BGS 10, and if it is, it isn't going to get a Black Label, and overpaying this much, I don't see you getting $5,000 for a BGS 10. So, that's the Dark Charizard. Number 3 is going to be the 2015 Art Academy Kecleon. I had to talk about this one. I talked about all 3 of them that were in the last Heritage auction, and I'm going to talk about this one here. Now, the Art Academy, as I've said before, and I'll say it again, this was a competition that happened in 2015 where fans would draw their favorite Pokemon or Pikachu on the 3DS Art Academy game and would submit it. Winners would get 100 copies, and there were some copies that went to employees. I would assume the print run is still probably well under 150, more like 115. I think it's what a lot of people estimate. Bottom line is, the overall viewpoint is 100 of these, right? You never know what sets have employee copies. In terms of what we know is distributed, it's 100 each. So very, very rare cards. This is in a BGS 9, and it sold for $53.75. Now, this is not a true 9. You do have an 8.5 in the corners, so it's not a true Beckett 9. But what about this sale compared to other things? Well, number one, we got to talk about the amount graded by PSA, just because like we did before, that's kind of the benchmark to see how many of these are graded. 16 are rated by PSA, which is in kind of that middle area. It's not like the Melly Pikachu or the Fujishima Pikachu or Fujishima Pikachu, which have a ton of them graded. And it's not like the Mudkip, which there just isn't any graded. So this is kind of in that middle area. It's not a insanely rare one of them. It's not a really common one. Now, in terms of recent sales, there was a PSA 9 copy back in December of 2024 that sold on Fanatics Collect for $5,000. Now, this exact same BGS 9 sold earlier this year in April for just under $4,000. And then a CGC 9 did $4,300 in March. So this card has recovered a decent amount from earlier this year, which again does make sense. Earlier this year, we were still in that Scarlet and Violet huge boom period from TCG Pocket, and now we've been seeing more vintage and rare cards going up in value. So it does make sense that this card ended up going up by over $1,000 in 4 months. I mean, we're talking about April of this year. It sold this same card, not a Beckett 9. This exact card sold for just under $4,000. Whereas this time, we're seeing it hit $5,000. So this is a pretty respectable sale for this card. I've said it before, aside from the Fujishima Pikachu and arguably the Melly Pikachu, a lot of these cards you could actually argue are a bit undervalued when you consider how scarce they are, how great the artwork is compared to other old cards that are very limited print runs. So this is a card, I think whoever got this, solid buy. I'm not going to say they got this, they overpaid. I don't think they did. I think that the fact that those ones sold for $4-ish grand was a bit of an underpay. Whoever got those got them for a really good price. This is about what it should be. Really solid buy. Congrats to the winner. The number 2 honorable mention, the Pokemon movie Topps 2000 Lugia first appearance in a PSA 9. If you know anything about this card, you know just how insane it is to see this in this high grade. Now, for those of you who have no idea what this card is, because you only do, Nintendo or Wizards of the Coast Pokemon, Topps used to make Pokemon cards. They were one of the companies making them. They would make a couple of sets here and there. They made a set for the 2000 Pokemon movie, well, Pokemon 2000. Now, each box, it was like normal, it was like a 36, pack box. You would get one first appearance card. There were 6 of them. The main chase was Lugia, the Lugia first appearance. These are silver holofoil cards. If you're a sports card fan, think of like the Stanley Cup card that is so iconic from Pro Set. And if you know anything about that card, you know these are insanely tough to get in high grade. Number one, if you open a box now, the odds of you getting a copy that will be over a PSA 5 due to them sticking or damage is insanely low. And then number two, them just surviving all this time in high grade, insanely rare. It's why they're just so hard to get in high grade, and even they're not just that common at all. There's only 161 of these graded by PSA, with only 3 of them getting PSA 9 condition, and none of them getting 10. So you're talking about a card that already is just not that common in terms of how many there are out there, less than 200 graded by PSA, and this is one of 3 PSA 9s. Now, in terms of some recent sales to talk about from various grades, a CGC 9.5 did 10,000 in March this year. Now, another 9.5 did 84 and 9,000 back in 2024. Now, different PSA 9s did 7,800, 19,000, and 12,000 within the last 2 years. This exact same PSA 9 had a really wild sale back in 2023 of 30,000. So this card has gone down a decent amount. Now, in regards to this exact sale, what are my thoughts on this one? Honestly, it might be because I really like Lugia. It might be because of other things. I think this was a solid buy. I don't think this was a massive overpay. If anything, he may have slightly overpaid. The fact that the CGC 9.5 did 10K, because I've always been somebody who said that, a CGC 9.5 should be viewed as a better card than a PSA 9. It just should be, right? Just like a CGC 10 should be viewed better than a PSA 10. I know some people say, oh, it used to be a 9.5. Yes, but a Beckett 9.5 in history has always been viewed just as, if not better than a PSA 10. Bottom line is, I think that going for 10K, this you could argue wasn't overpay, but I think this is a card that has a really good future. It's becoming a truly iconic Lugia card that more and more people are starting to recognize and be able to know off the top of their head, hey, this is a big deal. This is a really cool card. It's one of the best cards you can get of Lugia, especially English-wise. I know if you make like a binder like I'm doing for my favorite Pokemon, I'm not putting in the Topps cards because they're extra. This is one that a lot of people would throw in there because it is such an iconic Lugia card. And in terms of English Lugia cards, aside from like the first Neo and the Crystal, there's a good argument to be made that this is the 3rd most desirable English Lugia card out there. Just a very, very cool card. So congrats to the winner. Maybe a slight overpay technically, but this is one that if you really wanted this in this grade, go for it. This is a card that has a great future. And the number one honorable mention is going to be a copy of Pokemon Red, graded a WADA 9.8 with an A++ seal, as this is a sealed version. The Rattata Pixel 2nd production. Had to talk about this one. This was a really cool one. This is like the highest selling video game in this auction. Had to talk about this one. Now, video games are not my realm of expertise, especially the vintage ones where it's not just a simple, oh, it's the sealed version versus a complete in box, and there's different printings. Now, in terms of this, WADA does have a pop report, CGC doesn't. WADA has this version, the Rattata version, 123 of those graded that are sealed, with only 8 of them being in 9.8 condition. Now, other Rattata sales, which none of them were designated as second printing, they were all designated as something else. Those ones sold for $42,000 in November 2024, $119,000 August 2024, $45,600 in August 2022. Those are the last 3 sales. So, pretty varying. Now, the last sale was the $42,000 sale. So, this already sounds pretty good. This is from a collection, the Dubai collection, so it has a little bit of that. Of course, we know with comic books, having a pedigree of collection is a big deal. Honestly, I would imagine that compared to that, this is a solid buy. I mean, this is one of those that when you just think about it, it just feels like this is a good buy. Even if you don't really know video games a lot, it just feels like this type of game, a sealed Pokemon Red that's a very early printing in such a high grade, should be going for more than 30,000. Like, you think of certain cards and what they sell for, I would say that this was a really good buy, whoever got this one. This is one that I would love to have. Again, like I said, there were a couple of games I really did wish I bid on. Like, there was a Japanese copy of Pokemon White that sold for like $200 in a CGC 9.8. There was like a 9.8 Stadium 2 Japanese, which are unopened, but they're not sealed, weird things, that sold for like a couple hundred, or one sold for 112. But this was a really cool buy. I do hope to get a great video game of probably like silver at some point, even if it's complete in box. That's kind of like my main goal of a video game to get in my collection. But as for this one, I think this was a really solid buy. Congrats to the owner. Really love this purchase. Really cool item to own. So I think whoever got this got a really good price on it. And now we can move on to our top 5 sales, with the number 5 sale being a 2006 Charizard Gold Star from EX Dragon Frontiers in a PSA 10. This is a massive card. You are talking about one of the 2 most iconic Gold Stars. This and the Rayquaza are the 2 most iconic of the Gold Stars. Yes, more than the Umbreon. This was a sick card to see be on this auction. Now, this is a card that has a very low gem rate, even lower than the Pikachu we talked about earlier. We are talking about a pop 98 in PSA 10 with 3,800 graded. That is a 2.6% gem rate. Again, with the Rayquaza, this is one of the most desirable Gold Stars, period. Now, in terms of this card and comparing it to other sales, this was an overpay. The last 5 sales were $40,000 in June of this year. May 2025, there was a $20,000 sale. There was a $17,000 sale in February 2024. Then in 2023, there was one that sold for $16,000, and one on Fanatics December 2023 did $18,000. So this is a card that has gone up a lot. Now, in terms of the idea of transitioning it to a Beckett one, this is one that maybe could try and get a BGS 10. The left-to-right centering isn't exactly perfect. It's really good, but is that going to get a 10 subgrade? I don't know. And I don't think it's going to get a 10 subgrade in the corners. There's a teeny bit of whitening, at least from the pictures or scans that we see. So I don't think this is a BGS play. Another reason why this is an overpay is the Rayquaza. The Rayquaza in late 2023 was selling for like 40 grand, right? Compared to, obviously, the Charizards that were doing like under 20 grand. The Rayquaza is the one you want, because that's one that is just a rarer card with less than 1,400 graded, and it is a much harder card to get in terms of just purely how many at 47. Yes, it is a technically better gem rate, but there's just less of them out there. So I think that when I look at it, do I think that that card is worth, like, let's say $90,000 today? I don't really think so. And so if I don't view that being a $90,000 card now, do I think this is a $60,000 card? No. I think this was an overpay by at least 15 grand. I mean, at least. The last one being 40K itself was a bit of an aberration in terms of a price sale. I don't know. This is an iconic card, but this isn't the Gold Star, right? It is the Rayquaza that is the Gold Star to get. And so I think that this being this high, 57.5, when there hasn't been any sale like that in recent memory, it's tough to justify that, especially compared to the Rayquaza sales being that 40K that happened a couple times in late 2023, whereas this card was doing less than 20 grand at that point. Because in all honesty, the Rayquaza should be worth at least 1.5x, arguably 2x like it used to be, just because of how much rarer it is. Because I think 2x is probably what it should be. It is the iconic Gold Star. But overall, though, feels like an overpay. Still was a really cool card. Like, let's just call it this. This is a really cool card to see in an auction. Even though there were 4 cards that, well, one of them tied this one and 3 sold higher, this is the one that you're like, whoa. Well, let me phrase it. This is one of the 2 that you're like, whoa. The number 1 card, which if you know anything about this auction, you already know what the number 1 card is. But aside from that one, this is the one you're like, whoa, that's a really cool card to see. So that's number 5. Coming in at number 4 is the Trophy Pikachu number 3 trainer from the Blastoise Mega Battle. Now this one is signed by Mitsuhiro Arata. Now this one is a wild one to talk about, because it's one of those where it's hard to really define a value for it, but there was one really good example of another one in terms of value. So let's talk about this. So this was from one of the early number blank trainers, right? Number 1, number 2, number 3 trainers, which have become super iconic nowadays. Now, this is not ones you think of now where you're thinking of the true big boys. Only like one of these or 3 of these are printed, only 6 of these. This is about 14 copies are estimated to exist, because these were from like a specific type of battle, like the Blastoise Mega Battle thing. We've seen other similar ones. in terms of cards like this, but this is like very early, so very, very low amount graded. Now, this one being signed in sketch, this isn't the only one. There was another one. In this same exact auction, there was a number 2 trainer Blastoise that was also signed in sketch by Michihiro that also sold. And it sold for $5,000 less than this one. Now, in terms of this value, this feels like an overpay. Because the fact that the number 2 one sold for $5K less. The one that sold for $5K less has a significantly better actual card condition. Like, the back of this card has paper loss. There's, like, legit problems with this card. Like, this is one that is not getting above a 3. I mean, even saying a 3, this is probably more like a 2. This is not a high-grade card. And the fact that it's signed in sketch, yes, the sign and sketch are a bit better conditioned. Especially the sketch are better conditioned or less faded or whatever you want to say. It's a better autograph and a better sketch than the number 2 trainer. But we're not talking about somebody who's dead. We're talking about somebody who is still active, who is still signing every once in a while, who's still, active. He is a legend. He is the legend of the Pokemon, like TCG art stuff. But I'm not going to sit here and say this should be a $57,000 card. Like, I understand this is an early number 1 trainer, and this is more the iconic, low, small Pikachu of the trophy. But legit number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 trainers, right? The ones that are the more modern day, where there's only 3, 6, 9 printed, depending on what year. Some of those have sold for upwards of like 20 grand less than this, or like 20K more for like a really good one. I mean, even the last auction we talked about, we had a really good trainer card sold for like 70 grand that I thought was a bit of an underpay. And I know there's been like the full art ones in recent years, which there are some issues because those ones have usually more of them because there's things like Pokemon Go championships. But it just feels like this, it just feels like at least you can say that this shouldn't have sold for more than the number 2 trainer. The number 2 trainer was in such better condition. I understand that cards like this, condition isn't everything. But if you're talking about a signed and sketch card, and they're essentially the same card, just one is a number 2 trainer. Number 2 trainers normally sell for more than number 3 trainers for obvious reasons. So that's reason number 1 why it should have gone for more. Number 2, the card was in significantly better shape. Like, that other one was like a legit, like, not super high grade. But we're talking like, it would have been like higher than a 7. This is one that, again, like I said, ain't even hitting a 3. So the fact that it sold for nearly 60 grand, 5K more than the other one, just because the autograph and the sketch are in a little bit better shape. They're not even in like significantly better shape. They're just in a bit better shape. Because again, it's not like this autograph is perfect either. There are some like fadiness to it. I don't know. I think this was a bit of an overpay compared to the other one. But let me know what you think down below in the comments. This is still a really cool card to see. It's just, mainly compared to the other one, this shouldn't have gone for more than it. Let alone 5 grand more. And is arguably a bit overpriced. But because of how iconic it is, like this artwork and how old it is, I do feel like I could see why it would be a $50,000 card. Just not when you had another one that was in much better condition that obviously barely hit 50 grand. Coming in at number 3, we have the Kangaskhan Parent-Child Mega Battle Family Event Trophy card. This is a really cool one. This is a really, if you're in the high-end Pokemon market, this is an iconic card. This is one of the more famous trophy cards out there because it doesn't even really look like a trophy card, but it is. So this was from like a special tournament that was a kid-parent tournament where you'd have both a parent and kid compete. And obviously, if you won enough, you would get this trophy card. This is a rare card. There are only 88 graded overall. PSA 9 is a pop 27. So it's not like a PSA 9 is like insanely rare, but there are 12 PSA 10s. But this is still a super, super sick card to see. This is one of those iconic, rare, high-dollar cards, especially because of the fact that Kangaskhan is such a perfect, Pokemon to use for the parent-child concept, because obviously it is a parent with a child in it, in its pouch. Now, in terms of overall sales recently, there was a sale for $68,000 in May of 2025 on Golden. That was also PSA 9. There was a PSA 8 that sold in March of 2025 for 54 grand. There was a BGS 9 on Fanatics that did 57 grand in July of this year. There was a PSA 5 in March on eBay that did 35 grand. And a PSA 7 on Golden last year that did 43,000. I'm going to say I think this is a decent buy. I really do think this is one. $61,250 for this card honestly seems like a pretty decent buy. Especially because this card looks to be in really good shape. It really does look like the front centering, the left to right centering, because it looks like it might have a slant, like a slight slant cut. It looks like that's why it's a 9. When you look at the back of this is one of those cards where if you'd sent it into Beckett, Like, it'd get a 9.5 in, like, the corners and maybe the edges as well. Like, the top left edge on the back is a little bit of whitening, but overall, this is a really, really nice-looking card. This is a really good eye appeal card, in my opinion. I think that when you talk about vintage cards, I think centering is a bit overrated in a lot of ways. Like, when you talk about a vintage card, especially sports cards, but even Pokemon, in my book, it's more so about, is the card preserved over those years, not, oh, was it cut wrong at, the factory? And so to me, this card has awesome eye appeal. The back looks beautiful. The front, aside from like the little slant, it looks like it has a slant cut, looks to be in beautiful shape. The fact that it's a PSA 9, that is a legit PSA 9, this is a beautiful card. I think that this selling for less than the one that did in May. The fact that, it did sell for a bit more than the BGS 9, even if, it's hard to view BGS 9s being worth less than a PSA 9. But even with that, I feel like this was a solid buy. I think whoever got this at a decent price. I don't think they stole this by any means, but I do think this is a really solid buy by them. I want to say congrats to whoever won this one. This is a really cool card to see sell, and it's really cool somebody got this. Again, this is one of those cards that is iconic. It might not be as rare as the Mega Battle Blastoise trainer we just talked about, but this is more iconic, right? Like with sports cards, the 52 Topps Mantle in a vacuum should not be worth nearly what it is, but because it is so iconic, it breaks the kind of trend and norms of what it should be, right? Like, technically, it's not a rookie. The 51 Bowman is technically his rookie. 52 Mantle is not really a rare card compared to other cards from the era, but it is so iconic and well known that it is worth the money it is, just like this one. This is a more iconic card than the Mega Battle Trophy Pikachu, even though it is more common with 88 graded, and that's just graded, not how many are out there, period, and that's just PSA. It's a much more common card compared to that one, but because it's so iconic, it's worth what it is. I think this is a solid buy. Coming in at number 2 is the Mario Stadium Pokemon Snap Competition Gyarados promo. This is a really cool card. So this was like the Art Academy stuff before Art Academy. This was the OG Pokemon Snap video game. You would take the pictures, get your best photos, and if you won, you were given 15 copies of the card. Just like the 2015 Art Academy, but significantly rare. Only 15 each. So these are really tough to find just in general. Now, there are 9 total graded by PSA. This is the only authentic. The other 8 are all graded a 7 or higher. And it's important to note this card would not get a 7. The card is not in great condition. As you see, the bottom right corner in the back is pretty messed up. A lot of edge wear, a lot of corner wear. This is like a mid to lower mid, like a 5, 4-ish kind of grade card. And the centering in the front isn't great either. It's pretty off-centered. So this is entry level of a copy you can really get for this card. Now, this is one of the more iconic ones of these Snap promos. Like, yes, there are other ones, but this is one of the more iconic ones. In terms of the only other sales I could see, there was one in Golden in May of 2025 that is a more realistic sale that did $51,000 in a PSA 7. Now, there was one in July that ended up doing $150,000, but that was a PSA 9. It was a buy it now. The buy it now is, sometimes questionable, but that's what it did. Bottom line, this was an overpay. Let's call it like it is. When a PSA 7 did $51,000 just, 3 months ago, this doing $70,000 is objectively an overpay, unless you view the other one as a significant underpay, which I probably would as well. Like, I think that when you consider the PSA 9 buy it now doing $150, that being like an actual buy it now, somebody bought it for that. I think the PSA 7 for $50,000 was a steal. But this is a card this is an entry level copy. This is, of all the ones graded by PSA, this is the worst one you can have. It's still a beautiful card. It's just a matter of if you eliminate the PSA 9 copy sold, this card shouldn't sell for anywhere more than like $35,000, considering how much weaker it is than the PSA 7. But when you consider the $150,000 sale by the PSA 9, I would say this should have been closer to $50,000. I think whatever the PSA 9 did, they should have done roughly a third of it, in all honesty. This is still a super sick card and one that is, like, whoever owns this is owning a great card. And this is purely from right now. Bottom line is, if you ask me in 10 years, is this card going to be worth over $70,000? Yes. This is a card that, as long as Pokemon is still active, which is no reason why I shouldn't, this card's going to keep going up in value. I mean, let's call it like it is. Is this an overpay today? Yes, absolutely. Is this an overpay in 5 years? Honestly, probably not. I wouldn't be shocked if in 5 years we end up going through, the continuous boom thanks to the 10th generation, that we're probably getting next year as well as 30th anniversary. And then we're going to see like a dip period, and then we're going to see it start booming again, and this is going to be a card that's worth over 75 grand even in this condition. I would not be shocked. But today, 2025 in August, is 70 grand in overpay for a PSA Authentic that would be graded less than a 5? Yes. This was an overpay, still a sick card. And coming in at number 1, the Pikachu Illustrator Koro Comics in a PSA 9. The most iconic high dollar Pokemon card out there. Yes, you got your Charizard first edition, but when you talk about a high dollar Pokemon card, this is where it starts, this is where it ends. 625 grand. My God. Just dwarfing the second highest sale in this auction. Almost 10xing the second highest selling card in this auction. And for good reason. This is the iconic card. There were 39 total copies distributed across technically like 3 contests. That's it. Now, there are 46 graded by PSA. Yes, the math isn't exactly mathing, but there's a lot of, with a card like this, there's only one PSA 10. You can try to regrade this one, get it in a PSA 10 condition, try to get it higher grade. Maybe there's a couple, again, like we talked about, maybe a couple employees got it. Maybe it's more like there's 45 or 50 out there in total. Bottom line is there's 15 PSA 9s, well, in total that have had a serial number. Technically, might be like less than 10, in all honesty. And this might be one of those that's been graded a couple times. This card looks to be in great shape. I mean, when you look at the back of this card, it looks gorgeous. You've got like the tiniest bit of like whitening in the top right corner and maybe the bottom left. This is a card that legitimately could get a Beckett 9.5 in my books. This is a beautiful card. Now, like, yes, they might not because of the fact that it's an illustrated Pikachu. We all know these companies, when it comes to higher end cards, definitely grade a bit differently. But if you were to view this as like any other vintage card, you're thinking like this is a potential 9.5 candidate. This is a gorgeous card. Now, in terms of last 5 public sales, obviously not counting the Logan Paul PSA 10-1. Last 5 public sales. There's a PSA 8 on Fanatics this year that did 360 grand. There was a PSA 8.5 that did 300 grand in Fanatics 2024 September. A PSA 7 on Golden did 210 July 2024. PSA 8 did 305 on Golden in June 2024. PSA 8 did 317 Golden February 2024. So PSA 9 is not sold in a while. Now, in terms of this price, I gotta say, I think this was a solid buy. I really do. I know saying a solid buy for a 600 grand sale is insane. But again, yes, it may technically be a Pop 15 PSA 9 condition, but I think it's pretty well known that a decent amount of these have been resubmitted to try and get a PSA 10, to try and get that, multi-million-dollar card. So when you look at it, the pop is probably like under 10 in actuality. And you're still talking about it being like the top 25% of this card. The fact that a PSA 8's last sale was $360,000, which, remember, that was the last sale since the 8.5 at 300 grand in September 2024. We've been in this vintage resurgence. This is the iconic card of this era. This is a card that, again, do the time machine 10 years in the future. In 2035, it is entirely possible that you cannot get a PSA 9 for under $1 million. Is that a guarantee? No, nothing's guaranteed. But is there a legit likelihood, like a high likelihood, that in 10 years this is a $1 million card guaranteed? Absolutely. And even today, like unlike the Gyarados, I think today this was a solid buy. PSA 9 of this doing less than 2x of a PSA 8, I feel like this is a solid one. I think that it should have done whatever 2x PSA 8. Again, the PSA 8, like of all the last ones I mentioned, the 8.5 for 300 grand easily was the best buy. It's just PSAs with 0.5s are really awkward in terms of pricing and people buying them. That one to me was the buy of all of these. I think that was even more of a better buy than this one at 625. But aside from that one from Fanatics 2024, this is definitely the second best buy of all these ones. I think that's 600 grand for this card. This is a card that easily could have gone for 700,000. I think this is a really solid buy. I don't think this was a steal, but I think this was a really solid buy. Congrats to whoever won this. This is such a cool card. This is one of those cards that if you've ever got the chance to hold it in your hands, you're probably going to treasure that moment. Because for Pokemon cards, like, this is as good as it really gets. I mean, this is even better than, like, 52 Tops. Like, a 52 Tops mantle, almost anyone can hold one if you just go to a big card show. Almost nobody's holding one of these babies. This is as sick as it gets. But overall, that'll do it. This has been ZomFox. Let me know down below what your thoughts are on these top 5 sales, as well as the 5 honorable mentions. at least to me, it feels like this is one of those auctions where you had a decent amount of overpays. Like the Heritage one I talked about last time, and yes, I did talk about 5 extra honorable mentions. I felt like it was a good mix of underpays, overpays, and just right pays. Whereas this one, it feels like it was a bunch of, like a few overpays. Though part of that is because of how rare some of these cards are. When cards don't show up, it just can result in things going for more than they should. Think about Albedo number 2 for comic books. There was one that sold in like Heritage. I don't remember how much it sold for, but it sold for a super high price. And some people thought that meant what it was worth. No, it was just that it hadn't sold in so long that you had a couple people who were willing to buy it for X amount. That when the second one came up a couple months later, it sold for like, I think like less than half of it. And we've seen that time and time again with comics and even cards, where if you have something that just hasn't sold in a long time, especially in that grade, it can result in a lot of things. Not everybody bids on gold, and some only bid on Heritage. So if you have guys who only bid on Heritage, you might not have even really known about the golden sale. Though if you're talking about these cards, you would assume that they would, but you never know with how people are. But overall, I think that the Pikachu Illustrator was of the top 5 sales, that was the best buy. The Kangaskhan number 2, and I think the other 3, to some degree, were overpays. I think the Mega Battle was the least egregious, followed by the Gyarados, but the Gold Star Charizard was really an egregious sale. As for the video games, like I said, and honestly, I think the Pokemon Red version was probably the best buy, the 10 I've talked about. I really do feel like that should have gone for more, but that'll do it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We do at least one TCG video every week. As whenever there's a big Heritage auction, I will recap the 5 highest selling cards or the 1 highest selling item in 4 cards, as well as talk about some honorable mentions. We've been doing a series going through every single Scarlet and Violet set, ranking all the illustration rares and special illustration rares in a tier list. At the time of this video coming out, I believe we have covered the first 3 sets, with 151 being the one coming out next week. I'm doing my Pokemon Shield playthrough as well on the channel. And as always, guys, have a great night.